After following Game Freak for so long, the game Tembo the Badass Elephant did not really catch me all that much by surprise. In fact, after developing both a rhythm game and a horse solitaire title, yes, horse solitaire, in the last few years, it is apparent that Game Freak has interest in developing games that are not only bound to the Pokemon universe. What surprised me, however, is that Game Freak's latest title is skipping Nintendo consoles entirely, opting for a release on Sony and Microsoft platforms instead. Regardless, I'm happy to report that Game Freak's newest title retains excellent quality, no matter the platform it finds itself on. The gameplay within Tembo the Badass Elephant is a cross between the Mega Man and Rayman franchises. Players control a militant elephant that has the power to run over, stomp down on, and hammer opponents. Although long-range combat is less emphasized in the game, Tembo still has the power to use his trunk to send water at various enemies and obstacles. This acts as the main projectile at Tembo's disposal. As opposed to the more floaty and slower style of a Mega Man, Tembo's gameplay feels a lot more responsive and quick in nature. The satisfaction of smashing through enemies and crushing their various weak points reminded me of the most recent Rayman titles, and that is definitely a good thing. The game does certainly draw roots from Mega Man as well, though. Level design within Tembo the Badass Elephant is incredibly deliberate. Simply stampeding through the level without considering the various enemy weaknesses is a quick route to death. Players don't just play Tembo, they kinda have to learn Tembo. The bosses are especially reminiscent of Mega Man. Although the difficulty of the bosses leaves a little bit to be desired, players will find that learning boss mechanisms and strategies will often prove to be paramount to simply trying to outgun them. Now to move on to the elephant in the room. Yes, that pun was completely and entirely intended. The graphics. The visual style within Tembo the Badass Elephant is gorgeous. In fact, the style often reminded me of the UbiArt engine used in both the Rayman and Child of Light games. Moreover, the amount of detail added to the game was rather stunning. The developers covered the world in onomatopoeia. As in a comic book, nearly all sounds are accompanied with a ba-dum ba-dum ba-dum, or a bam, or any one of a large number of written sounds. With colorful and seemingly hand-drawn animations, traversing Tembo's world was not only fun, but a visual treat. The beautiful art style was complemented by a wonderfully orchestrated music score, featuring triumphant horns gallivanting with melodic woodwinds. It was a shame that there weren't more tunes, however, as it seemed like parts of the score long outstayed their welcome. Within each level, there were a myriad of collectibles to discover and collect. The more collectibles found and the faster the time, the higher the score for the level. Unfortunately, this is where the developers began implementing a few baffling design decisions. First and foremost, there are a limited number of lives for the player. It is easy to understand why developers usually implement a system of lives, however, it did not feel necessary in Tembo the Badass Elephant. In fact, I felt that one of the best parts about the recent Rayman titles was the lack of a game over screen, which liberated players and allowed them to explore levels and find collectibles at their own pace. A limited number of lives discouraged level exploration, as I felt there was a much larger emphasis on trying to survive rather than trying to get all the various collectibles. This proved to be problematic when I found out that collecting a certain number of items in each level was actually mandatory in order to fight the boss at the end of each world. Although this was not a huge problem for me, it is easy to see how less experienced or more casual players may encounter problems progressing through the title when they are forced to replay levels to find 90% of the collectibles. After completing levels, players can then go find their score on a leaderboard. Unfortunately, the designers did not implement the leaderboards right into the levels. Instead, players must completely back out to the main menu in order to see how their scores compete against others. This became especially unfortunate considering the longer than ideal loading screens that the game has. The game would be far better designed if the leaderboard simply appeared automatically upon the completion of a level. Overall, Tembo the Badass Elephant is incredibly fun to play. The mix of Mega Man and Rayman style transcended just the gameplay and was also implemented in the game style as well. Although the bosses left a little bit more to be desired and the odd design choices were unfortunate, Tembo the Badass Elephant is yet another wonderful addition to Game Freak's repertoire of titles. This game gets an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks everyone for watching, I really appreciate it. Please make sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time for another review.